एकम अक्षरम हृदि निरन्तरम भासते स्वयं लिख्यते अपनी हृदय मध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रम् इति साक्षात् आत्मरूपे हृदि विषमनसा चिन्वता अज्जता आयुचलनिरो आत्मनिष्ठो देहं मृण्मय जडात्मकम् अहं बुद्धिर्न तस्यास्ततो नाहं तत्तभावशुद्धिसमये सिद्धात्मसद्धा कुतो दृष्टात्मनिष्ठा स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचल शिवः विभाति स्वयं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचल शिवः पूर्णो विभाति स्वयं Namo Ramana. With Bhagavan's immense grace, we have been meditating on the introduction to Vivekachoodamani given by Bhagwan, and we are embarking on the work from today. We are relying on Bhagwan's prose translation, a loose translation of the original Sanskrit work. There is a verse for verse matching done to the Tamil translation in an Ashram publication, which I had shown in the last satsang. So Bhagwan's translation, though it is in a free-flowing way, it has absolutely covered all the pointers present in the great work Vivekachoodamani. A bit more about the verses. The original Sanskrit has 580 verses, 582 in some. The Tamil translation has more than 660 verses, a little bit more. The Payaram and the conclusion take about 20 verses extra, but still there are some extra verses in between. But there is a match between Bhagwan's prose and the verses in Sanskrit and verses in Tamil also. And we have got a English translation of the 580 verses. I have loaded it on to our group, the Vivekachoodamani group. It's a very good translation of all the 580 verses. So you get a gist of it. There is no topic-wise division there or analysis there, but it is more than adequate to see that there is a coverage that doesn't leave any important aspect of the Vivekachoodamani. Now we begin with the Acharyas. Acharya's Mangala Shloka, or the prayer, the Dhyana Shloka in the beginning of the work. Why is this Mangala Shloka or prayer kept? What is the purpose, the Saguna nature of the work, the Saguna goal that is intended? They say is that from the author's perspective, it is twofold perhaps, that the work should get completed in the proper way and that it should reach to the seekers who are in dire need of the work. And from us who are reading and intending to practice the teachings contained here, for us too, the prayer is twofold, that we read and complete the reading of the 580 verses. And secondly, more importantly, we understand the essence and translate it into Nididhyasana, or the equipoise of living in the self. The easy, natural way of abiding in the self. That is the goal, say the commentators. We begin with the invocation. The invocation or the Mangala Shloka or the prayer is usually could be addressed to the Kula Devata, could be addressed to Ishvara, as is the second Mangala Shloka in Ulladu Narpadu, it is addressed to Ishvara. It could be addressed to the Guru. And we find that this prayer from Acharya Shankaracharya is addressed to his Guru, Bhagavad Pada Govinda Sadguru. The reference can be taken to Vishnu as Govinda as well as his Guru is the contention of some of the commentators, but it is clearly addressed to his Sadguru, Govindapadar. And here the Acharya covers both the Saguna and the Nirguna aspects of the Supreme. First of all, this is a prayer addressed to the Guru Swarupa. And the Acharya says his Guru can be understood only through the essence of Vedanta. The essence of Vedanta being the oneness of the Atman and the Brahman. The oneness or the Nirguna nature, where the Atman and Brahman are one and the same. His Guru, Govindapadar, can be understood Gocharam, Sarva Vedanta, Siddhanta, Gocharam, Agocharam. By any other means, he is not understandable. In the sense that who is Govindapadar, who is his Guru, who has taken on that name, it is the very Atman, it is the very Brahman, it is very the self of all, as Akka would say, Bhagavan being the manifestation of the self. To him we surrender is the import of our prayer all the time. And the same is the prayer of Acharya, saying that his Guru is only knowable through actually finding the truth of the Vedanta, which is to abide as the Brahman. Only when you abide as the Brahman can you know who is Govindapadar. Obviously, since Shankaracharya knows this, he too cannot be apart from that. So, Sarva Vedanta Siddhanta Gocharam Agocharam. Pranatosmi, he says that I do my pranams to my Sadguru. Sadguru itself is the Guru who is abiding as the Satvastu. That is the prayer with which we begin the whole work. And Bhagavan adds his own invocation, which our Subramaniam sir used to like a lot. He would keep repeating it many a time. It is Ahamenum Moola Aviddai Ahandrida. Ahamenum Moola Aviddai Ahandrida. Ahamahamaha Allum Pagalara. Ahamahamaha Allum Pagalara. Aham Olir Atmadevan. Padathinil. Aham Magilvaha Anisam Ramikave. In English, Anisam Ramikave is the beginning. Rejoice eternally. The mind rejoices at the feet of the Lord, who is the self, shining within the heart as I eternally, so that there is no alternation of night and day. Knowledge and ignorance, night and day, that alternation is not there in the I. This will result in the removal of the ignorance of the self. Ahamenum Moola Aviddai Ahandrida. The only purpose of the Vedanta Siddhantam, Sarva Vedanta Siddhantam, is in one sense to know the truth of the Atma Brahma Aikyatvam. In another sense, it is solely the removal of the ego. Ahamenum Moola Aviddai Ahandrida. Ahamahamaha Allum Pagalara. As the I, beyond knowledge and ignorance, beyond night and day, Aham Olir Atma Devan Padathinil. That Atma Deva who is shining within each one of us, Aham Magilvaga, with all love and respect, with all bhakti, for us to eternally rejoice, let us fall at that feet of the Atma Devan, is the invocation Bhagavan gives. Before we go into the work, let us have a look at the Karma, Bhakti, Yoga and Jnana, and as to why the Acharya has taken the Jnana Marga to delineate this truth to us, and why he is going to be very strong in some of his words on karma and why some of his words belong to those days. The society of 1200, 1400, 1500 years ago, and how we have to take the essence of it, especially in the beginning, where the norms for the student is cited. The words may appear bit traditional, bit directed against, but that is not the intent. The intent is the seriousness and the sincerity of the student. Before that, since he is going to talk quite strongly about karma, let us look at the whole process that has been kept in the Bhagavad Gita and other works and explained so clearly by Bhagavan in Arunachala Pancharatnam. What exactly is the sadhana that we are looking for? That we seem to have these zones of doing and result, love and object of love, knowledge and ignorance, self and non-self, yoga marga. I am living as inside and outside. I am just taking up these four. That let us say that our journey, the spiritual journey, involves the understanding of primarily these four areas, which we call as karma, bhakti, jnana, and atma-vicharam. Let us say, what is the essential sadhana that has been kept before us by the spiritual masters, the sages of yore, is that first of all, they have tried to bring the karma phala, the result of karma or the goal of karma, inside the karma itself. By asking us to let go of the phala, what they have primarily done, the great sages, by asking us to let go of phala, they have showed us that the phala of the karma, so far as it is outside the karma. Now I am speaking. The phala is in just observing that I am doing the processes of speaking properly. But the moment I take the phala out of the karma, the result out of the karma, and I place it outside, then obviously the karma also becomes incomplete. The phala obviously is ashashvata. So the first step that they do, we understand clearly, is that the phala is, or the goal is, brought inside the process. Now, what does this mean? What does this sadhana mean? That when we boil milk, when we walk in the morning, when we do any of these actions, why is it that the phala is to be brought, or the goal is to be brought within the karma itself? There was an interview with Rahul Dravid at the end of his career, at the end of his batting career. He had not yet finished, about a year or so still to go, but he has piled up huge statistics, figuring in the top 3 in test batting, top 4 or 5 in the averages of that time, all that. The longest batted in the last 30 years, the highest weight loss that has happened in one innings, all these things he has stacked up. But he was asked, what is it that you do to keep track of improving the statistics? He said, I don't look at the statistics at all. I look at the processes of my work and just keep the processes going. That means bringing the goal of the action within the action itself. Maybe it does not make the action complete, but it makes you sensitive to what is it that you are doing. It makes you sensitive to the love with which you do the action. That means it brings us from karma That is why we saw that in the Vedas, in the first segment, when they have the phala of iha and para, a third phala was mentioned, that if one does karma within the rules of dharma, within the railings of dharma, then the consciousness, having attended to keeping itself within the rules, it becomes sensitive to the fact that the phala is ashashvatam, that the iha and para phala are ashashvatam. That is where the jnana journey starts, that it starts inquiring into what is this I am doing, and the Vedantic parts becomes relevant. Say those who study the Vedas, the first part, the third phala of the first part, that it makes you sensitive to the ashashvata phala, is what is done here when you start observing the processes. What do we come? We come to the love with which we do the things, the love with which you take up a field of activity, not keep it outside the activity, just because society is making a living well there, just now because the trends are good, go that way. Maybe that is a supplementary goal, but the main and clear goal should be that only the processes are kept in mind. Then what happens? Then we come to the bhakti, that the love with which we do the work. Here too, as we pay attention, pay love to the work that we do, we start understanding that now the very word karma has shifted to love. That means if the objects of love lie outside the love, then too the love becomes limited. Then too the love becomes limited. If one loves the work overly, then one finds that the other areas of life get little attention, little love, and get depleted. So the same rule of what happens in work applies in love also, that if the object of love is outside love, that is where we come to Ishwararpitam. The work we do itself becomes object of love. Because we understand, unless we love, we can't do, unless we love what we are doing. But if you love it objectively, this particular, you love your work alone, then obviously there is a depletion, because the goal has been kept outside the work itself becoming love. The karma itself now is love. The same rule of karma apply here, that so far as there are objects outside love, love is also limited. The objects of love are also limited. That is where we come to the attention. The attention is love in the jnana. Attention is awareness directed to object, but now the game is shifted to knowledge and ignorance. We find that now the attention we give is directed by knowledge and ignorance. The attention we give to the work we do, we call through the mind, through the intellect, we no more call it love. Only the name has changed. The name has changed, but it is still work. It is still love. Only the name has changed. We are still doing work. And if the goal lies outside work, same rules apply. That the work also becomes limited. The goal outside also becomes limited. So, what is that knowledge which is beyond the division of knowledge and ignorance? Is there a knowledge that is beyond the division of knowledge and ignorance? Because if there is knowledge and ignorance, the attention seeks knowledge wherever there is ignorance. When the outside is divided into the two areas of objective knowledge and objective ignorance, and suppose we feel we don't know something, obviously the mind is directed, has to attend outside, go outside its area of knowledge. Is there a knowledge that doesn't have any outside. That is where we come to the self-inquiry and self-knowledge of Bhagwan, which is beyond the dyad of knowledge and ignorance, where that awareness is self-awareness, is self-knowledge, is complete in itself. If you consider self-inquiry as work, as karma, obviously the result of self-inquiry is not kept outside. If you consider it as love of self, then the object of love is not kept outside love. If you consider it as knowledge, then there is nothing outside of self-knowledge for it to be limited. So we find how only the nomenclature is different. We don't need to have any aversion for the work we have done, the karma we have done, but only understand that if we keep the goal of karma outside, outside the action, then the action becomes limited, the goal also becomes limited. Same rule applies to love, same rule applies to knowledge, same rules applies to self-knowledge. The self-knowledge is that which is complete, self-contained, self-attending. You can call it the work of self-attention. You can call it the love of the self. You can call it self-knowledge. You can call it just being the self. That is why Bhagavan calls it as Mahayoga. It covers the whole area of karma, bhakti, yoga, and jnana. And hence, all the other yogas are done with the ego, whereas this act of knowing the self, which we are going to see as part of this work, Vivekachoodamani, it is the simultaneous fulfillment of karma, bhakti, yoga, and jnana. Kritstale mana, swasthata, kriya, bhakti, yoga, bhoga, yoga, bodha. Kritstale mana, swasthata, kriya, bhakti, yoga, bodhascha nishchitam. It is surely the end of karma, yoga, bhakti, and jnana. And one can, with that assuredness, with that calmness, that we are fulfilling the rule fixed in karma yoga, we are fulfilling the rule fixed in bhakti yoga, we are fulfilling the rule fixed in yoga marga, that there is no outside. And that is how self-knowledge has no conflict with any of the other margas. We will be seeing some words about this karma marga is like this. It is only that in those times that this understanding was clearly that karma involves this for phala like this. That is how the strong words are used. But with the understanding, we can go off to the jnana marga, which the acharya is teaching us. Some references to the gender in the beginning, we may find that it does not apply to today. But Bhagavan is exactly translated as the acharya is written. How does it matter how in those times references were made? We know that this practice is applicable to both male and female equally. Whoever is ready to understand and apply, the acharya is only stuck to the times of those days. Whatever was the student population of those days, to that he has addressed. So paying a very light touch attention to those areas and going on to the more important areas, let us get into the work itself. The work of the acharya, where we are going to begin with verses number 1 through 48. 1 through 48 in the Sanskrit. They are the preliminary verses before the Upadesha begins. We may take about 4 sessions for these 48 verses. I see that probably 12 to 14 verses in a 45-minute session we can cover. So we will try and cover the first 14 verses today, if that's possible, or some part of it, so that this and the next session we will take as the first session. In the first portion, that is verses 1 to 14, which we are going to take up today, The Acharya begins with what are all necessary for mukti. So it will appear very rigid in the beginning that it is very difficult to get a human body. Even though one does, very difficult to become a Brahmin. Even if one becomes Brahmin, it is still more difficult to walk in the path of Vedic Dharma, in which Vedas are chanted. Still more difficult is it to become a perfect scholar, and more difficult again to undertake inquiry into the self and non-self. Yet more difficult than all this is to obtain the wisdom born of experience of the self. Liberation in the form of abundance as the self, born of that wisdom, is not to be attained except as a result of righteous actions performed throughout countless crores of births. This is the first introduction, how the self is attained, and it appears a very rigid and traditional path that the Acharya is putting before us, but he's going to turn the tables. Just wait for the next sentence, next verse. Here, the whole journey, especially if you take the discrimination as self and non-self, which Bhagavan brings in verse number 11 in Ulladunarkudu, it is really transformative. once you are introduced to self-inquiry, and once you are allowed to know the discrimination between self and non-self as the key, that அறிவுறும் தன்னை அறியாது அயலை அறிவது அத்தனையும் அறியாமை. When Bhagavan introduced, no, I would suggest all of us just grasp that part, that he ranks it just before realization. I'll read that it is more difficult than anything to make an inquiry into the self and non-self. Then, yet more difficult than all this is to obtain the wisdom born of the experience of self-liberation. So the next step is self-liberation. Just the one step before self-liberation is the discrimination between self and non-self. And by Bhagavan's grace, all of us in this satsang are introduced to that. So what I suggest is, the rest of the qualifications that he has suggested, just take it with a light touch. That these are the things that you have to be a scholar, he has written, no? That you have to have made meticulous study of these scriptures. And we see how gentle, how ripe many scholars are, many those who have spent years and years of, and we haven't done that, let us say, but we have been introduced to the clarity of the self is knowledge, non-self is ignorance. I suggest that you forget about all the other things. This one thing you hold on, because it is just the preceding step to obtaining the wisdom of liberation and then abiding safely in that. So it's a whole scheme of things that the Acharya says it would be lucky to have. It would be incredibly fortunate to have human birth, to be born in that community which studies the Vedas, study the Veda, become a scholar. Even more difficult to the next step, even more difficult to discriminate between self and non-self. There you latch on. That if you have got that, that's enough. And proceed with Atma Vicharam. That Arivurum Tannai Ariyadi, anything other than yourself, you know, that is ignorance. So let it go and hold the eye. If you have that discrimination, the next is the only thing that is left in this line is the realization of the self. So keep doing that. Keep doing that. Don't worry about the numerical enumeration of the other qualities. But then Acharya himself is going to give some relief. However, next verse, which is often taken by the other commentators, suppose somebody takes 125 of the 580 verses, the second verse they take. However, even though all the above qualifications may not be obtained, Bhagavan has not left out anything. He has kept everything as it is. Many of the commentators, they will take this verse, the verse which I am reading now. However, even though all the above qualifications may not be obtained, liberation is assured through the grace of the Lord. If only three conditions are obtained, that is a human birth, intense desire for liberation, Manushyatvam, Mumukshutvam, Mahapurusha Samshraya. Mahapurusha Samshraya and association with sages. Samshraya means to be obedient to the teachings of the Mahapurusha, to come under the sway of his grace and guidance. Samshrayaha here for the disciple is you have to love Bhagavan's teachings. You have to meticulously take it up with all the shraddha you can gather, you have to practice it. We have Manushatvam, we have obviously got the Mumukshutvam, and Mahapurusha is available for us. And we need to have the Samshraya. We have to submit ourselves that we know nothing more fortunate could have happened to us. Because the Acharya, from all those conditions, he has reduced it to merely 3. So many of the commentators will start with this, that if you have Manushyatvam, Mumukshutvam, and Mahapurusha Samshrayam, then you have been blessed by Ishvara. The Ishvara Anugraha is already there. Then what else is left? The moment Ishvara Anugraha is assured, the Acharya is going to pounce on you and to say, now do your part. You have to do the sadhana. We have got Manushyatvam, Mumukshutvam, and Mahapurusha Samshrayam. You have to do your sadhana. See, that is the nature of objective sadhana. That the grace and effort seem to be two different things, and we need to have both. We need to have both. We need to have grace, which the Acharya is assuring. If you have got human birth, if you have got some degree of thought about liberation being the only happiness, and if you have come under the sway of a great teacher, absolutely that part is covered. When you come under Bhagavan's teachings, Mahapurusha, only we have to yield ourselves completely to his teachings. Mahapurusha Samshrayan, then you are the luckiest person. But then he is going to pounce on you in the next verse. Once you have got all this luck, and if you don't work for how he treats you, we'll go into that next. But then before that, I will give you some relief. Before the Acharya pounces on all of us, let's take some relief in Bhagavan's method. See, the beauty of Bhagavan's method is that both the grace as well as the effort are present in one sadhana itself. That is, within the I thought itself, all these things that you have seen, all the things that you have done, all the things you have thought about are all contained in essence within your I thought. And the light of consciousness, the pure light of consciousness, is also present within the I thought. So when you take the I thought to its source with whence am I, or put the light of attention on the I thought with who am I, already both are there. This is what Bhagavan clarifies to Kapali Shastri. Just grasp this. That is the blessing of self-inquiry, where Ananya Bhakti is there. This is Ananya Bhakti. Ananya Bhakti means God is within the I. Therefore, the grace is already there. If you are doing self-inquiry, grace is already there. And it is clarified by none other than Kapali Shastri, who asks, I think the sarcasm is not coming through in the words, but I imagine some sarcasm when he asks Bhagavan, oh, then now if we sit and do self-inquiry ourselves, by that itself will we get self-realization. And Bhagavan raises up and says, no, the practice of self-inquiry itself, that you are inquiring who am I itself, means that grace is already there. That means you are seeking the purity of the I. Now there is no other which you are holding. The attention is being put on nothing other than the I. Therefore, the grace is also within that I in the form of pure awareness. And the sadhana related ajnana is also present. The net result of all things you have done, seen and known is present within the I. So when we do who am I, this doubt that whether we are having grace, whether we got Manushyatvam, Mumukshutvam, and this, therefore Ishvara's grace is there, now Acharya is going to pounce on us, that's not there. Because both grace and effort are simultaneously present in self-inquiry. So let us take that and then go on to allow Acharya to pounce on us. If by some great penance, here the Sanskrit words he uses, don't know how you got it, okay, that by some unknown cause, and that rarity, a human body is obtained, and its ability to understand the meaning of scriptures, and yet, owing to attachment to insentient things, effort is not made. That means grace, God's grace is there. You've got Manushyatvam, You have got an understanding of scriptures also. Now, if you don't do effort, if effort is not made to attain the immutable state of liberation, which is one's own true state, then indeed one is a fool committing suicide. What greater fool, Mudaha and Atmahatya we are doing is what the Acharya is going to hold the threat as. What greater fool is there than one who does not seek his own good? Obviously, there can't be nothing more foolish. There can't be nothing more suicidal than this. And the Acharya is threatening us so that we get the negative is said, so that we bring the book to the class. The teacher says, don't come without the book. Don't come to school without uniform. Don't come without shoes shining. It doesn't mean you don't come. It means you should come. Come with the thing that is to be done. That means the threat is not that now you should feel afraid and run away. It is that such a great thing has happened, that million to one, billion to one chance. You have got human birth. You have got mumukshutvam. You have got Mahapurusha Samshraya. Now, in probability, there is something called as joint probability. Joint probability means that two things, there are some other complications in that, but put it simply, suppose there is 50% of something happening and even be happening 50% chance, let us say. What is the chance of both happening together is 0.5 into 0.5, which becomes 0.25 or only 25% chance of all both the events happening. Suppose there is a third event which has to also happen. What is the probability of that taking place? And that is also 50%. 0.25 into 0.5, which will be 0.125. That means 12.5%. From 50% chance, it comes to 12.5% chance. These percentages I have used very high percentages. The percentage of being a human being, probability of being a human being. See, the beauty is, if you take it with other living beings, it's different. If you take it by their mass, it's different. If you take it from beginning of creation, it's different. If you take it as the atoms to atoms, it is even more less probable that you become a human being. So depends on how far you go and what material you take. The probability of being a human being is very, very rare. And each of us has got it. Let us say it is 0.01% that you be a human being. 0.01% or 0.01 is the probability. That is 1% chance, let us say. Then multiply it with what is mumukshutvam. How many of human beings really hanker after liberation? I leave it to you. How many of human beings have the great good fortune of coming under this way and believing the teachings of a guru like Bhagwan? I leave it to you. 0.01 into whatever you did, multiply, you will get 0.00 something. Now, in that probability, you are one of the most luckiest people to have come and been born with human birth, with the seeking of liberation, and obvious Mahapurusha presence in our life. Now, if in all this, if we miss up sadhana, if we give up whatever time is there, don't postpone it. Make best use of it, is what Acharya is saying. If you miss this opportunity, having got all that, if you miss this opportunity, it is equal to committing whatever is saying as we will be committing. And of course, it will be very foolish of us to have left this opportunity. And that is something that we have to keep in mind, that Ishvara or life has blessed us with the rarest of rare things. Now, there is how rare it is to finally get the blessing is that this ego plays truant. Even when we are a good sadhaka, the remnants of the ego plays truant stops us from reaching the final goal. There is this Christian saint called Saint Francis. To show the rarity and how we miss the opportunity, he is a God realized person and he has a friend who has been a friend for a long time, so has a lot of freedom with him. And one day in their evening walk, the friend asked him, "How is it, Francis, that you were such a happy go lucky fellow in your younger days? You used to do what all a spiritual person should not do. How is it that you have become God realized?" The answer which Saint Francis gives opens our eyes towards the danger of the ego and the rarity of the culmination of sadhana involved. It's just not enough that we have human birth. It's just not enough that we have the seeking of liberation. It's just not enough we have the Guru's teachings. The Purushartha, the effort is a must. The need to eliminate the ego is a must. See what Francis says. Francis says, God looked at all the sadhakas. He's not looking at those who don't have manushatvam, those who don't have mumukshatvam. He's looking at those who are having mumukshatvam and doing sadhana. They are doing sadhana. And he says, in them, he finds a pride in their sadhana. The greatest of those who are doing dharma marga have a pride in their dharma. The greatest of those who are doing bhakti marga are having a pride in their bhakti. The greatest of those who are doing jnana marga, the sincerest of, they are having bloated egos about their sadhana and about the jnana marga itself over the other margas. So the God found this. And what he decided? He decided to select the worst possible person who could not have got liberation at all. And by his grace, he liberated him. So that the others who are having pride over their sadhanas will understand that it is by the grace of God that all completion is done. That means the sadhana should be done. The sadhana should be done meticulously as threatened by the Acharya, and not out of fear but out of great love, santatam, salipara, santoshamahave. However, all sadhanas get fulfilled only when the ego is completely eliminated. Only when the ego becomes zero. Till then, the sadhana is not complete. Because about the sadhana itself, there will be pride. There will be the ego about sadhana itself. And that is where the blessing of Bhagavan in the form of giving Atmavicharam directly goes for eliminating the ego, the root problem. Now that means we have been blessed with the luckiest position where even the dangers of objective other sadhanas, other spiritual sadhanas is eliminated by directly attacking the root of all problems. Moola avidya. Moola avidya, that is the invocation of Bhagavan that says to uproot the Moola avidya, you are present as the I, and to your feet we have to fall and merge is the invocation of Bhagavan. He is attacking the Moola avidya. That is the greatest good fortune any sadhaka can get. Now, this is a time when we cannot leave this opportunity. We will simply blame ourselves for having missed the opportunity. So gather up, girdle up, tighten up, and whenever Bhagavan reminds us, whenever we have remembrance of Atmavicharam, sit and realize that we are the luckiest among the luckiest among the luckiest to get this remembrance now, and immediately ask, for whom is this thought? For whom is this anatma? The self, non-self discrimination has been taught to me. I am the most incredibly lucky being, lucky sadhaka amongst all sadhakas. That I understand I should not follow the thought. That is anatma. That is non-self. The arivurum tannai ariyadu, ayale arivadu ariyamai. This discrimination has been taught to me. Now can I sit quiet? Let go of the thought. Inquire, for whom is this thought? Who am I? Come to that self-luminous self, even in sadhana. Even in sadhana, the light of attention which was going towards the non-self is withdrawn and fixed in the self. Where else is it going to culminate? It is going to culminate only in the self-luminous self, only in the I, which is already present, waiting as the Guru Swarupam, waiting as the Swarupam of Govindapada, waiting as the Swarupam of Acharya Shankara, waiting as the Swarupam of Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi. It's verily waiting at the source of the I thought, waiting for us to let go of the non-self. With effort, seek our source, which is verily Bhagavan, which is verily I. Till when? Till there is no difference between the I and the sadhaka. And let us sit in practice. We have covered only 2 paragraphs out of 5. That means only 40% of what was required in this session. However, let's continue into the next session with Bhagwan's grace. Right now, let us sit in practice of Atma Vicharam. This Atma Anatma discrimination is the penultimate gift before realization. We have all been blessed with it. Let's latch on to it and sit in Atma Vicharam till 8 o'clock. Then we can listen to Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. You can keep for 7 minutes. Thank you.
नमो भगवते श्रीरमणाय।
Namo Ramana. Namo Ramaka.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana. Shining is the self in all beings. By the immense grace of the self manifest as Ramana, we are now meditating on the work of one of the manifestations of that self, Adi Shankara Bhagavad-pada, which has then been translated by our own Bhagavan, who is a manifestation of that self, translated into Tamil, at the same time giving us a summary. And the beautiful, essential aspect of today's sharing by Nandakumar ji is how the love for the self transcends all the dvandva. Our self-inquiry and love for the self transcends dvandva. And as a matter of fact, in the practice of any path, it is in self-inquiry that even in the practice that dvandva disappears, because the self is seeking to find itself. It is trying to pay attention to itself instead of to any object. It seems to me that the very crux of Atma Sadhana is this love for the self. When there is love for the object, how is it possible to experience the self? Because wherever there is love, attention goes to that object. And there's love for anything, the attention automatically moves in that direction. So if it is any object whatsoever, sometimes we are in love with subtle objects, subtle goals, subtle objects. But if it is an object, then what happens is that the attention is away from the self. It's for this reason that Bhagavan very often does not ask us to keep even self-knowledge as a goal before us. He says what is to be attained, what is to be realized. The self is ever realized. All this Bhagavan says, not to undermine the need for effort, but to do away with a goal-oriented approach. So, dvandva is cut. Totally, when one is asking oneself, who am I? Then the attention to any subtle object is also undermined. And there is love for the self and the self alone. Love for self-inquiry and love for the self are one and the same thing, is what Nandakumar ji pointed out to us today. So there is the option that we have to love any object, to pay attention to any object because of the love for that object, or to pay attention to the self and seek to pay attention to the self because of the love for the self. Of course, in who am I? In self-inquiry, the very beginning, Bhagavan says that everyone is in love with himself or herself because that is the source of bliss. The Atma is the source of bliss. It is self-inquiry alone, the self alone, which is lovable, no matter what one may be loving. It is the self that one loves, says Bhagavan. And that is said by Yajnavalkya to Maitreyi also. And then Nandakumarji went on to talk about the list of blessings, the rare blessings that have been mentioned or in a sense, the hierarchy of blessings that has been given in the Vivekachoodamani, and he came to the final blessing, the blessing of the discrimination between the self and the non-self, and the love for the self on account of this discrimination. So, in the list, if we see, it is said it is rare to be in standard 1, it is rarer to be in standard 2, it is rarer to be in standard 3. So, in Ramana Gita, Bhagavan says in one place, it may be that because of Shravana, in the chapter on Shravana, Manana, and Nidhyasana, he says, on account of Shravana, on account of listening to the Guru's words, one may get the experience of Atma Spurana, Aham Spurana. Or else it may happen due to Sukrita, due to the Sukrita of earlier births, which one has done. Or else it may happen, one does not know why it has happened. But if it happens that one gets the Aham Spurana, then what else is there to be listened to is what Bhagavan asks. He says, so that is the greatest Sukrita. That is the greatest Sukrita is to this one.
Tutorial. Window, welcome to TalkBack.
I'm sorry, there was some disturbance from my phone. So, the point is that if one has reached the last, that means, as Bhagavan says, one does not know why that Sukrita has happened. But if it has happened, for whatsoever reason, if that Sukrita has happened, that alone is true Shravana, says Bhagavan in Ramana Gita. So, it is not a matter of whether one has got A or B or C, but if one has already come to the point of having the discrimination between the self and the non-self, then one needs to hold on to that. And then in the next verse, as Nandakumar ji said, we've been blessed, we already know we have been blessed with the human birth. And Bhagavan, by bestowing this Atma Nishtha on all beings, regardless even of the human form, he indicates to us that the human birth also does not matter. Perhaps even the mumukshutva does not matter. But the Mahapurusha Samshrayaha, we have got Bhagavan's presence in our lives. Bhagavan has entered our lives. After that, we must make the best use of it. And if we do not do so, Adi Shankara Bhagavad Pada says, it is like committing suicide. Bhagavan does not say so, but there is a beautiful instance which Kanakamma quotes or narrates. She says, two Brahmins came into Ramanashramam with a dispute to be settled by Bhagavan. They had just finished the rituals at a cremation and they had entered. And one of them said, Bhagavan, I am so hungry. May I not eat at the ashram? Although I have just finished the ritual at a cremation and I have not had the time to go and have my bath, may I not eat at the ashram? Bhagavan said, you may certainly do so. Then the other one asked, but is it not wrong to have a bath, to have food without having a bath after having attended a cremation and performed the rituals over there? And Bhagavan said, undoubtedly it is not, it is wrong to do so. Then how is it, Bhagavan, that you are saying you're on the side of both the people? This was questioned, and Bhagavan said, how does it matter? When everyone here is in fact a living corpse. When all of us are living, if anyone who is not abiding in the self is actually a corpse. Does it matter if somebody has attended or performed a ritual at a cremation? How does it matter? There's another instance also, which Sri Natarajan quote, which happened in Skandashram, where Bhagavan says, everyone who is not abiding in the self is a living corpse. So, he does not say we have performed Atmatya. He says we are as good as dead. We are as good as dead if we are not abiding in the self, if we are not turning back to the self. So, what is it that we have to do is to cultivate love for the self. The more we turn attention back to the self, the more love is cultivated for the self. The more we pay attention to any object whatsoever, love for the object is cultivated because attention is the source of love. If we keep on paying attention to something, we will start thinking of it more and more and more. The more we pay attention to something, the more we will think of it. So Bhagavan does not ask us to pay attention to any sadhana even. And the example was given about pride in sadhana. So in self-inquiry, there is no sense of I am doing this or not doing this. I am going to attain this or not going to attain this. I have already crossed this or not crossed this. Everything, every object, every goal, every subtle object which is a goal or an achievement is all countered by the question, who am I? With love for knowing one's own true nature, which Bhagavan has given to all of us. And that is why we are all here. We have all been blessed with that great grace of longing to get back to our true nature. And by that very grace, let us hold on to that longing alone to turn our attention back. Whenever attention moves to any object whatsoever, let us turn it back to the source with self-inquiry, with the great astra which Bhagavan has given us, who am I? And that great weapon does its work and completes every part of the journey. It automatically takes us to its own culmination. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri.
Namo Ramnaka. Namo Ramna to all.